It is October 29th, 2021. I am Emma Maggart, Maggart, with the Indiana Jewish Historical Society, and I am speaking with Kathy Busch, Busch. Let's just start with talking about where you're from, where you were born, and an early memory from your early childhood.
Okay, so I was born in St. Elizabeth Hospital, which was in Lafayette, Indiana. Grew up in Lafayette for the first, I guess I must have been, how old are you in 7th grade, 12?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we moved, but no, let's see. So I must have been 13. We moved right after 7th grade to West Lafayette. So I started at West Side in 8th grade and graduated from West Side High School. And frankly, those are, well, they're both vivid memories. Mm-hmm. I've been reacquainting lately with some of my grade school friends who, actually the person I'm acquainted with the most, her mother and my mother were Girl Scout leaders together, co-leaders. I adored her mother, absolutely adored, and I think everybody did. Yeah. Her mother was just great. And I reacquainted, well, then we moved away, but I graduated from high school, went to college. After college, I think I told you, I lived in Paris for almost 3 years. I thought I would move back to Chicago. That was kind of in my master plan. Frankly, I wanted to stay there forever. Yeah. I really would. I would have, except that my brother, who was 11 years younger, he was very ill and needed a surgery for what now is more common called Crohn's disease. Okay. But back in the day, they didn't even know what it was. They put him on, they took him down to Riley Hospital and put him on a computer bank. There were like 3 other people in the world who had it, maybe more than that, but Dwight Eisenhower being one of them. Mm-hmm. And now they understand a little bit more about it. But anyway, it was very serious, and my parents were, just wringing their hands and please come home, please come home. And so, and I'd kind of, in my head, I was like, okay, I'll be back, of course. You always think the place you love, you'll be back. This is just, I guess, human nature. So, but I thought, well, I'll work in Chicago a while and, do something. I actually was going to apply for a master's. At this point, I only had a BFA in painting. But I'd had all this experience taking classes at the Beaux-Arts in Paris. And I had a fantasy life. And I was painting nonstop. So somebody in our temple took a look at my work and they said, oh my God, you've got to have a show here at Temple. So I thought, all right, why not? So I did, and I sold out of everything. And then I'm like, whoa, I'm going to have to make some more. Anyway, but I had slides of everything. And in the meantime, I talked to a guy in the art department at Purdue, and he said, oh, you're really eligible for this NEA fellowship that I know about, and I live in this town, in Provincetown, but all right, I'll apply. And in the meantime, I was just picking up it was actually a very interesting job at a framing shop in Chicago, in the Loop. It was a really, for an art major without a master's, it was a great job. I loved it. And people would come in all the time. I don't know what should I put it? Does it need a mat? Does it not need a mat? What kind of frame? So it was good. Yeah. And then and I had a guy friend up there, but he found a place for me. It's really near Wrigley Field now. Now it's prohibitive. I look at what I had. I had this gorgeous bow window. It was like maybe. It's just 2 flights out. Beautiful hardwood. It was a beautiful place. So I went up there in May, and in late July, August, I get this letter. You've been accepted. You're one of 10 people in the country, that's been accepted for this. I'm like, oh my God. Whoa. At this point, I'm really loving Chicago. I bike. I'm riding up down the lakefront. It's like this ideal life. But I thought, you don't turn this down. Yeah. So pretty much, it was my ticket to heaven. Everybody there it's called the Fine Arts Work Center in Provincetown, and it's 10 writers, 10 artists. I've been back there to visit since, and they give you a studio. Well, the writers, they give a nice little house with a quiet place to write. But Now, you know what? Some of those writers were housed where we were. It kind of looks like a 2-story, nothing of a motel. Huge gallery, and then they have visiting artists and writers coming in to give readings, and or the artists would come right to your studio and critique your work. Oh, I mean, it was amazing. And they give you a stipend to live on, a monthly stipend. So, now it wasn't grand, but
you're getting to do this amazing
You do
work.
what you want to do. It was enough to pay for my paint and my food, and that was it, because I didn't need to pay rent or utilities or anything. Looking back on it now, it was pretty rudimentary. We didn't have washing machines. I'd put my little laundry and ride my bike off the laundromat. Now they've souped it up because they, you know, kids would not
People expect more now.
They expect more. And these weren't kids. See, most of these people had their masters already, and it was just sort of this stepping stone into like the big galleries in New York, supposedly, or big galleries in Boston. So we worked our tails off, and okay, let's see what happened then.
And what year was that?
This would have been mid-70s. Then I got it renewed for a second year, and then that was max. You could only have it 2 years in a row, which makes sense, you know, spread it around. So after that, I was like, well, where do I want to go? So all the people I knew in this program were good friends, which they all were friends, but were either moving to Boston or New York, because that's where it was at. That's where things were happening. So, but I had an uncle in New York who was very estranged from my mother. But I thought, well, he's family in case of emergency or whatever. And then I had a couple writers who had this ginormous loft in a terrible area by Penn Station, which was really bad back then. So they said, well, just come live with us until you get a place. So I did, and it was pretty seedy, but which was good because it got me galvanized to go out and look for a place. And moved to the Upper East Side, which of course is very Tony. And it was something I found on the bulletin board in the Art Students League, where I was, you know, doing drawing classes. And it turned out that my landlady, who was my now husband's first cousin. And she says to me, oh, you know, I have a cousin. I think you'd like to meet him. He's from Indiana, too. And I'm like, usually when I'm out there, you know, it's like, I played down the Indiana. It was kind of embarrassing, or not really. It's just like, you know, it's not who I was really inside.
So you don't want the stereotype attached.
I didn't want that, And my mother was born on Long Island. My father was born in Chicago, so I really wasn't Hoosier in that sense at all. And West Lafayette High School, which is, you know, a couple blocks down there, I mean, we didn't even know anybody who had a farm, or, you know, now I'm living in the county and I'm sort of surrounded by corn. But, you know, it's 90% were the kids of Purdue faculty. So it was a very, you know, kind of like a bubble. It really was a bubble. Anyway, so blah, blah, blah. My husband was heading into his 3rd year of law school at NYU. We hit it off. He decided immediately I was it. This was it. Let's get married in whatever, November, I think he wanted to get married. We'd only met in July. So I called my parents, and they said, yeah, I met this wonderful person. I mean, they knew I had met this wonderful person, but they said, no, that's too soon. You cannot do that. And then we kind of came to our sense of, yeah, that's a little soon. So then we said, well, how about, what did we pick? January or February, something insane. And they said, you can't do that. It's winter in Indiana. You know, all of his family is from out of state. They'd be flying in and maybe not getting here. And what a gross time to get married. I mean, we were so stupid. So finally, and the kicker was my father was an accountant. So he said, you can't do that. That's middle of my tax season. Absolutely, you cannot do that. So I said,
on his schedule.
Yeah, so I said, okay. I was a good little girl, you know, and okay. So we got married in August. That followed, in other words, that would have been 13 months after we had met. And that was a fine timing. And the other thing is, why would we have gotten married? He still had to take the bar.
Yeah.
So
what really crazy.
Yeah, it was crazy. So I came back here in July of that would have been 78 by this time, and helped my mother, pick out this whatever. And he studied hard for the New York bar, and then he took the bar. I think he must have taken it like the week before we got married. I mean, right before.
Yeah.
Anyway, he passed the bar, so that was fine. So we were planning to live back in New York anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And then all three of my kids were born in New York, all in the same hospital with the same doctor, but we were living in different spots, because, like we told you that, because we had to keep moving, because we just couldn't think ahead. Well, it wasn't even thinking ahead. It was like we couldn't afford another bedroom or a third bedroom. It's just, everything was up. Yeah. Did I tell you this part of the story? This is very cute.
Okay.
So by this time we're living in Westchester County.
Okay.
And one thing led to another, and I think he said, my father had a very dear friend. I mean, we called him Uncle Fred. He was that close to us, and he needed somebody that was going to become partner in like 6 months in their firm. Now he really needed it. So we decided, we're not. By the time you pay for a babysitter and you go into New York from Westchester and you go to a show and you have dinner and blah blah blah, it's A, prohibitive, B, we didn't want to leave the babies that long, so we thought, well, it's probably a nicer lifestyle. His father also lived at that point, he was in Michigan at that point, but later he moved down to a really nice place in Martinsville. Anyway, so we thought, well, that might be really nice to be around grandparents, and it turned out it was wonderful. But there was a reason why I started on all this. So it's interesting. Growing up, you have this tunnel vision because you don't know anything else.
Yeah.
And then you go away for it, because I was gone 17, 18 years, a long time, and that wasn't just like to Ohio. When I was in Paris, I was, like we'd just bop up to, Amsterdam for the weekend, like you'd go to Chicago from here. I mean, it was just wonderful. So, I had a much broader perspective on things. I must say, now coming back now I'll circle back. In my elementary school, there were some Jews, but in my exact grade, there were 2 of us. We were always together in the same class. Let's say there were 3 third grades or 3 fourth grade, whatever. He was always with me. He was adorable. But that was it. That's all I had, period. So I didn't have any Jewish identity whatsoever. And back in those days, they didn't say, oh, have your mom come in and talk about Hanukkah. It was not mentioned. I mean, it was Christmas all the way. Yeah. Constant. All that stuff. I must say, fortunately, things were a little less commercial then. Yeah. So that was a help. By the time I moved in 8th grade, we moved over to West Side High School, and I had maybe 12 Jews in my class out of about 125, which is a pretty good percentage compared to what I had. Yeah. And there were 2 other girls who I was pretty friendly with, and my folks were very friendly with their parents, so we were thrown together sometimes. Yeah. And there were, I don't know how many, let's say it's six guys, 6 girls. Of the other, remaining 10, several of them were unaffiliated. And they were probably the brightest kids in the class. In fact, 2 girls who I was friendly with went to Sunday school with me, and we would joke around in Sunday school about stuff, but never did I honestly never felt any anti-Semitism, because I think perhaps I don't know, but perhaps everybody else was so ignorant They just had no idea.
Yeah.
They didn't really know what a Jew was. They had no, or what the difference, that kind of thing. I mean, it's not overtly anti-Semitic at all, but it's just ignorant.
Yeah.
It's just ignorance. And I think that's really what this community was at that point, because there were so few of us. I'll tell you, when I came back, now it could have been the contrast between New York and its environs, which I'd been in the whole East Coast, and I'd been there, for like 15, 16 years, 17 years at this point. No, I don't know. Started in 75, whatever, a long enough time that, people are like culturally Jewish. They don't have to be a part of a temple. But, you go into the bakery, you see challah all the time, and you see the menorahs in the windows, and you see, you get it. You see it. You're inundated with it.
You're aware that it's out there.
You're aware it's out there. And, all of the Christian friends I had, they were all aware of it. And, we talked about it, oh, do you give your kids presents all 8 nights? All this kind of thing.
Yeah.
And we talk about it. But, so when I moved back, I was like, God, there's like a church on every block practically, and it was just so. Not only was it the trappings of so much religion, but people were religious. I mean, they went to church religiously, no pun intended. They did, and that just was not Christians out east. They just kind of like in California too. They just. That's, we were born Methodist or whatever. We don't do anything funny. And I think this is very typical. So there were the 3 of us girls who were Jewish and in the same league. Like I say, this other one who was the biologist of the century, she wasn't really very social.
Okay.
She just was brilliant, but not
just how
not
she's
social.
wired.
And she was nice. She was nice. But so the 3 of us, we didn't, I don't know how to say, we didn't like hang out in the normal way that I hung out with some of my other best friends, if you want to call it that, in high school. Like, I wouldn't have, called one and said, let's go to the football game together. My mom will pick you up, my dad will bring you home, whatever. And yet, we were friendly enough. Now, both of them, coincidentally, had their parents send them to what I call fancy Jewish camp.
Yeah.
Very, very expensive. One was in Wisconsin on a beautiful lake, Camp Maccabee. I don't know if you've heard of it, it's still there.
Okay.
And one was in Ohio. I'm not sure where, but most of the kids were from the wealthy areas of Cleveland. It was Eastern Ohio.
Yeah.
And they would come back. I do remember this. I'd go over to their house as soon as they'd get back, and one of them, who was like the wilder of the 2, she would tell me about her boyfriend, Jimmy Novick. Now, how I remember his name is too funny, because I can't even remember half of my own boyfriends.
But this one
Oh, yeah. Oh, we got the full, blow by blow, and they were going to probably get married. Of course they didn't, But they were very steeped in the Judaism in the summer. And they both became counselors at their respective camps.
Yeah.
And, I wasn't jealous. I was kind of like looking at them like, from outside the window, looking in, kind of thing, like, that's kind of neat. It's interesting. But I didn't yearn for it.
Yeah.
I wasn't jealous. I wasn't anything. In the meantime, I was off. This was a really nice program that Westside High School did. They picked, the kids, the reliable kids, the kids they thought were not going to pull a fast one, to be counselor, of which there are always those in high school. This was the track coach guy, and he had a camp in Michigan on Lake Huron that, this is so awful. They called it Crippled Children's Camp. Isn't that terrible? But we did. That's just what it was called.
That's what it's called.
And it had a name like Grace Bentley, Camp for Crippled Children. I think the sign said Camp for Crippled Children. Anyway, I was the swimming counselor and the arts and crafts counselor, and all my little, buddies, none of whom were Jewish. We had a wonderful time. We did that 2 years in the summer, and that was very, very satisfying for me. So, frankly, in the long run, might have been better for my soul. As soon as we got here, my daughter, who is now my youngest, who's 30, closing in on 36, we went to Purdue Nursery School. Luckily, we got her in. We had to put her in when she was like 4 months old, so that by the time she was, they just put them in little cribs, you know, and you're there for 2 hours, enough time for the mom to go get groceries and come back. But they immediately nabbed me and said, can you come in and talk about Hanukkah to the kids? Well, you know, and it's just preschool, so it was a lot of fun. It was very fun, and I thought, great, I'm happy to do it. And, you know, and the kids loved it. And of course, you light the candles, and they're, oh, you know, it's really exciting. And I thought, great, that's it. That's the end of it, probably. Well, how wrong I was. Every single year in elementary, now I have 3 kids. Yeah. I had to be the Hanukkah lady. And finally, I was very glad when my now almost 36-year-old had a Jewish boy move into the class, and the other mother took up the reins, because it felt awkward to me. It just really feels awkward when, you know, like you're not talking to a New York or Boston, you know, audience that has seen Hanukkah stuff in the stores. Yeah. They didn't have it at Target in those days. No. Okay? We're talking like, what is this thing with candles together? I mean, they did not know. Wow. So, you know, like, but what I said, I never felt any overt anti-Semitism. Yeah. But I do think it was, sadly, because of ignorance. Yeah. And that's, you know, my story. Now, I have heard, okay, one of these 2 good Jewish girlfriends who went to the camp in Wisconsin, her parents, particularly her mother, said to me much later, her mother really liked me. You know, sometimes how you have parents who just really hook onto you. Yeah. And so especially like when Suzanne was up at camp, she'd call me in to babysit for the younger brother who was 12 years younger or something. Yeah. And so we'd talk, have a great time, and she tipped me off that the people across the street were extremely anti-Semitic, according to her. Now, I don't know. And ironically, their daughter was also in our class. And, you know, I never heard her say anything. I never heard any of her cohorts say anything, so I really can't say it. But, okay, the father of this girl, Suzanne, the father was a Holocaust survivor. And he had a very, very thick German accent. He actually taught German and Italian at Purdue. Oh, wow. He was a lovely man. He's still alive. His birthday was a month after my mother's, so I know this. He will be 100 in early August of 2022.
Oh, wow. And what's his name?
His name is Fritz Cohen.
Fritz Cohen.
Now, I would have you interview him. However, he now has dementia.
Join us for part 2 of this interview with Kathy Busch to hear more about Fritz Cohen, the Jewish professors of Purdue University, and the Lafayette Jewish community.